performance there by J-King.
J-King, full plot armor.
J-King is pushing himself into the ranks of the legend.
J-King is our world champion! J-King 7! What? The back-to-back Cards world champion!
Hello guys, welcome back to another video, and today I have something pretty special for you guys. I'm going to be revealing 2 new cards for the Covert Operations expansion. So, as I'm sure all of you are aware, the Covert Operations expansion is dropping June 11th, so just a couple days away, and not all of the cards have yet been revealed, so I am fortunate enough to have been given 2 cards by 1939 to reveal to you guys today. And these 2 cards fit into the same general archetype, and I can just tell you right now that this archetype is self-credit denial. So, the archetype of trying to lose your own credits to gain benefits. So, before I reveal the 2 new cards, this is not a new card, this card was revealed at the very beginning. Before I go over the new ones, I want to go over what we already have for the self-credit denial package, just to refamiliarize ourselves with these cards, because these are likely all going to be fitting into one deck, or maybe several decks built in different ways, using many or all of these cards. So first, let's look at the payoffs for denying your own credits. What are the cards that you want to run to deny your own credits for? Like, what is the point of this deck? So the first thing we have up here is the 5th Regiment, of course, a 4 cost, 0 operation cost, 4/4 infantry. When you lose a credit slot, this unit gets +2/+2 if it's on the battlefield, or -2 cost if in hand. And this card is going to be incredibly powerful, because with certain hands, you're going to be able to cheat out several 5th Regiments quite early, and then try to keep snowballing with them. If you're able to continuously deny yourself credits, then this will just continue to snowball, and, you know, you get 2 of these out on, like, turn 2, and then you get them to 6/6. They have 0 operation cost, so you can continue using, even with your reduced credits, you're getting less credits each turn, but these are free to operate. And, you know, getting out a 6/6 on turn 2, turn 3, that is free to operate, is making up very quickly for the credits you are losing. Yes, you have less credits than you should have, however, you're getting this out sooner than you should have, and you're operating it for free. So that's going to be a pretty big payoff, of course. But that is better in the early game, and it falls off a little bit towards the mid and late game, especially against control decks in particular, where they're going to start having removal for these things, and it's a standard, so 4 of them's quite a lot, but, you know, if they're able to remove 4 5th Regiments, what else are you going to be doing with this deck? It's not just a cheat-out 5th Regiment's archetype. Well, the second thing you're going to be doing with the self-credit denial package is One Roof. Now, I've spoken a lot about One Roof in my initial card review, and I'm not going to spend as much time talking about this, but I think One Roof is the best card by far in this archetype. I think it's the best payoff. And, of course, One Roof is a 4-credit order, draw 2 cards, gain 2 credits for each credit slot you have lost this battle. So if you have denied yourself credits just twice, this is essentially a free to draw. And by essentially, I mean you need 4 credits to spend on it, but you will immediately gain 4 credits back. So as long as you have 4 credits to spend, which if you're denying yourself credits can be an issue. You know, if you have denied yourself down to 3 credits, it's hard to use this, and that is going to be a cap on just how soon you can get this out. But it does not stop at 4. If you've denied yourself credits, say, 5 times this game, this is gained 10 credits on top of the 4 that you spend. So, you know, you're netting yourself 6 credits. So draw 2 cards, gain 6 credits is pretty good, you know? Now, you are making up for the fact that these are credits that you have lost. These are credits you should have had on previous turns, but you didn't because you were continually denying yourself credit slots. However, if you're able to chain multiple One Roofs onto a single turn, suddenly things can get out of hand really, really quickly. You're able to dump a big board of units. You're able to deal a ton of burst damage if that's sort of what your hand is built around. That is sort of what's going through the mind of One Roof. You're going to want to be controlling the board early, maybe getting out some 5th Regiments, maybe using the credit denial cards as tempo cards early in the game, and then you're going to want to save these One Roofs for some sort of One Roof pop-off turn where you get like 30 credits in a turn. And even though you started the turn with 4 or 5 credits, you're going to end the turn with 30 and just dump your entire hand and try to win the game off of that. So those are two pretty good win conditions in combination. You can try to cheat out some early stuff, and then you can just try to pop off and dump your entire hand later in the game if the 5th regiments haven't won you the game already. Well, there is a third payoff card for this self-credit denial theme, which is the E13A Jake. This one's an elite 3-cost 2/3 bomber. When you lose a credit slot, your units get +1/+1, including the Jake. Now this one is a little bit slower. It requires a bit more setup, but it's an elite, so I think that sort of makes sense. This isn't meant to be like the core card of the deck that you build the deck around. This is just meant to be more of a card that's going to help you along the way. While you are just working this in. Like, you're not going to just play this out by itself on turn 3, but, you know, if you have a decent board, but it's not quite there yet, and I think most often you're going to be dropping the Jake on a 1-roof turn, where it's, when you're denying yourself credits, and you're rarely going to be getting over 5 or 6 credits on a turn without 1-roof, it's difficult to use Jake effectively. But if you have, say, 30 credits on your turn, you play Jake as the first thing you play, and then you play like 3 or 4 other units, and then you deny yourself 3 credits, and suddenly Jake is a 5/6, and everything else on your board has +3/+3. And that's going to be very, very good. So Jake is going to be a pretty, not an integral part of this package, but a strong part of the package that is going to help push the deck forward. And that is the third payoff card we have seen so far. But how are we denying credits? Well, there is 3 new self-credit denial cards that we have seen so far. The first one is Air, Land, and Sea, and this card is incredibly powerful. It's a 1-cost order. Develop a card in your deck, lose a credit slot. So, develop is you get a copy of it. You are given 3 random cards in your deck, and you pick one of them, and it will add a copy of it to your hand. So, it's like a Spoils of War, but for 2 very, very big differences. 1, it's a copy, so you can still draw the second one naturally. And 2, the other ones do not get put at the bottom of your deck. They just stay randomly shuffled into your deck. So that means you don't have to worry about getting given 2 really good choices that you want both of them, and then the other one is now buried in the bottom of your deck. This is a copy. And also the other thing about Air, Land, and Sea is it's 1 credit, deny yourself a credit, which might on itself sound kind of bad, kind of silly, but it means that, you know, you're, say, on turn 1 you pass, and then on turn 2 you play 2 Air, Land, and Sea, or you play 1 Air, Land, and Sea, and you develop into a second Air, Land, and Sea. Well, now you've gone back down to 1 credit, but if you're using that to cheat out, say, 2 or 3 5th regiments, and then you use that last credit to play a 3rd Air, Land, and Sea, suddenly you have 3 6/6s on the board on turn 3, and it doesn't really matter that you only have 1 credit slot. So Air, Land, and Sea, very, very powerful card. It's going to help you get more 1-roofs. It's going to help you get more Air, Land, and Seas. It's going to help you get to cards like Jake, where it's an elite card, very, very powerful that you want. So it's going to help you fish through your deck faster and set up these sort of combo-esque turns that we're likely going to be seeing with this deck. Then we have Commit the Reserves, and this is just a very solid card. It's a 2-cost order. Destroy target unit with attack equal or less than your credit slots. Lose a credit slot. So this is essentially just going to be a cheap piece of removal. It's sort of comparable to Honorable Death. And this is going to be another way that you are controlling the board while denying your credit. So if your opponent's playing something aggressive, some tempo-based deck, you're at least able to stay on par with them on the board, or at least attempt to, while you're setting up these big combo turns. So a card like Commit the Reserves might be able to destroy like a Sherman or a Schutzen or a Panzer Grenadiers or a 35T, or even like a Signal Regiment or a Sendai. You know, it's able to compete with early things, and it's based on the unit attack, so it's also particularly good at getting through guards. You only need 3 credit slots to get through a Glamour Boys, and you don't need any credit slots to get through a Bryansk. And on top of that, you're then losing a credit. So if you have cards on board that benefit from losing credit slots, this is going to be a big tempo swing. Like if you have a Jake and a 5th regiment on board, you're going to play Commit the Reserves to destroy their unit, and then your Jake gives +1/+1 to itself and +1/+1 to the 5th regiment and any other units you have, and then the 5th regiment also gets +2/+2. Suddenly you're starting to snowball a bit. And then we get to the third self-credit denial card that is coming out. This one's not coming out with the expansion, but rather coming back. This is a card from the Allegiance expansion several years ago. Very, very powerful card, very, very popular card, one of the strongest, and it was rotated out of the game, I believe in the first rotation, because Desperate Measures deal 2 damage to all enemies, lose a credit slot. This is huge. If you can get this early in the game against an aggressive deck like Jago, you can just blow them off the board very, very quickly, and now you're able to then follow that up with other cards that snowball with the lost credit slot. Before, the losing a credit slot was just completely a downside. It was always a bad thing, but you ran Desperate Measures anyways because the effect is that good. Now, you have this card that is one of the best cards in the game without losing a credit slot being a good thing, and now you can have it in a deck where losing a credit slot is a good thing. So Desperate Measures is going to be really good. You can also like get it off of Air, Land, and Sea for, again, just stack the losing credit effects and stack getting to these powerful elite cards. And now we get to the first of the 2 new cards I'm here to reveal today. I will say now that the 2 cards, we have 1 additional payoff, and we have 1 additional method of losing credits. And unlike the way we have set it up to now, where I looked at first the payoffs and then the cards that deny it, of these 2, we are going to first look at the one that denies credit. So we have an additional way on top of the Desperate Measures, on top of the Air, Land, and Sea, on top of the Commit the Reserves, and technically on top of the Dawn Operations if you want to run that. That's like a package you could run with Dawn Operations, which makes all your air units operate for free, lose a credit slot. Obviously it could work with Jake, it could work with a card like Shiden or Hien, something like that. But we have one more way to deny credits coming out in this expansion. And then we will have one more payoff to look at the very end. So first up, let's look at the additional way to deny yourself credits. We are going to have the 40th Cavalry Regiment. So this is a 3-cost, 4/3 Japanese infantry, special rarity, so you have 2 of these. 0 operation cost, like the 5th Regiment. And this is deployment, lose a credit slot. Just straight up deployment, lose a credit slot. Pretty bad. Destruction, reduce the cost of all cards in your hand by 1. Doesn't matter if they're countermeasure, order, or unit, all cards in your hand when this unit dies get reduced by 1. And this is going to naturally be very, very powerful for a number of different things. So 1, just in the dedicated self-credit denial deck, this is what you're going to be wanting to play on turn 3, basically 100% of the time. Because this is going to be just a solid on-curve unit with 3-cost, 4/3, 0 operation cost is not terrible. It's not great. If it was a vanilla, you wouldn't run it, but it's not terrible. And its deployment, lose a credit slot. Well, what are you really doing on turn 4 with this deck? Obviously, 4 credits lets you play. It puts you up to the ability to play your 1 roofs, but you're not going to be playing 1 roof on turn 4, because then you're not getting like the 10, 12, 14 credits that you would if you save it. And the other thing is, if you have 1 roof in your hand, you play this, so on turn 4 you'll have 3 credits. But if you can trade this off, your 1 roof will go down to 3 cost. And that cost reduction is permanent. So it is not for the turn, that is a permanent cost reduction. And that also means, very importantly, it will put any Air, Land, and Seas in your hand down to 0 credits, which is going to open up a huge door of possibilities, almost a Pandora's box. So this is an incredibly powerful card. It's also going to be triggering your 5th Regiment. It's going to be triggering your Jake. You want to get this card. And again, it's a special, so you only have 2 of them, but with Air, Land, and Sea, you could technically get up to 5 of these. And there is actually counterplay to it, though. And that's interesting, because deployment, lose a credit slot, unless you have a Jake or a 5th Rangers, or a 5th Infantry, on the board, you're not going to get immediate value out of it. You're losing credit slot, but that's sort of promises down the line. And then your opponent's going to have an opportunity to suppress this. If your opponent can suppress this or remove it from the board, like with a card like Sendai or Depths of Winter, without triggering its destruction effect, then you don't get the reduction cost. You just played a 3-cost, 4/3 lose a credit slot, and that might not be good enough if you don't have enough payoffs in hand. So your opponent's going to have some amount of counterplay to this. They can also choose to try to trade off their other units and slow this down, try to pin it, try to stop you from being able to trigger the destruction effect. But there's some other things you can do with this. For example, if you want to run this in sort of a destruction-themed deck, you could run this with Elephant Boys, or a card like Duty as a Mountain, where you're trying to trigger the destruction effect multiple times to get a 2-cost reduction on every card in your hand, which would be pretty good if you could manage to pull that off. The other thing about 40th Cavalry Regiment is that you could theoretically run this with ways to destroy your own units. Now, Deadly Duty has been rotated, which was the destroy a friendly unit, draw 2 cards, but you could still run this with the Soviet destroy a friendly infantry, turn it into a tank of the same cost, and you could use that. There's some 3-cost Japanese tanks, so you could play 40th Cavalry Regiment and destroy it on the same turn if you're scared of planes. If you're scared of suppress, you're worried that this is going to get suppressed and you want to trigger the ability immediately. And the other thing about this card is this is just a very powerful effect in some sort of combo deck, because combo decks have for a long time been trying to find the best ways of running credit cheat. So they've run cards like Aerial Reconnaissance in the past, which is a countermeasure that when your opponent plays a unit, it reduces the cost of all orders in your hand by 1. And that card has been very, very popular in all sorts of combo decks. Now, 40th Cavalry is basically like an Aerial Reconnaissance, but on all of the cards in your hand, which opens up a wide variety of different combos. And it's for Japan rather than Britain, which, again, opens up a wide variety of different combos. So you could theoretically run this without even needing to run the other self-credit denial package. It doesn't necessarily need to be in the dedicated archetype. You could just run 40th Cavalry as a solid way of getting some immediate tempo loss of losing the credits. You lose access, or immediate value loss, losing access to those credits in those future turns, but in exchange for the ability to reduce the cost of cards in your hand to try to set up some elaborate combo, whether it's some sort of push combo, some sort of sheet and bolster type of combo, anything like this. 40th Cavalry, incredibly powerful. But what is the last payoff card? Because we've seen the 5th Infantry, the 5th Regiment, very, very strong. We've seen the Jake. You know, that's a pretty solid support card, but it's not going to win you the game on its own, probably. We've seen the One Roof, gives you a ton of credits, but what are you going to be using those credits for? Because a ton of credits do not win you games. And, you know, if you just play a ton of credits, play a ton of units on board, and then your opponent plays a board clear, your opponent plays a Depths of Winter, or a Strategic Focus, or a Wave After Wave, well, suddenly you don't have a board, and all of those extra credits you gained were for nothing. So what is a payoff that the self-credit denial deck could get that would give them immediate tempo on board, immediate return on investment for all of their lost credits over the course of the game? Well, I will tell you, it's the Great Expanse. So the Great Expanse is another Japanese elite for the self-credit denial theme. It's a 4-cost order. Set your credit slots equal to the enemy credit slots. Your units get +1/+1 for each slot gained. So this is the card you are looking for. This is sort of the core central card of the self-credit denial deck. Now, it might not necessarily on its own be as powerful as One Roof, and you can definitely win games with just the 5th Regiment and some air land and seas. You don't need this card to win. But if you get this card in the right situation in a dedicated self-credit denial deck, the Great Expanse is going to absolutely demolish your opponent. So, say it's turn 10. Turn 10, your opponent has 10 credits, and you, over the course of the game, up until now, you've denied yourself credits 6 times. You know, you've played 2 air, land, and seas, you've played Desperate Measures, you've played a 40th, and you've played a Commit to Reserves. You know, you've denied yourself 6 credits, so you have 4 credit slots on turn 10, and your opponent has 10. Maybe even 11, if they played a War Machine. But let's say 10, for the sake of argument. Then, you reach your 4th credit, and you play One Roof, which will be gaining you 12 credit slots. Or, not slots, 12 credits. So you will then go up to 12 credits. And then you play a second One Roof. So you go down to 8, but you gain another 12, so now you have 20 credits. And then you play a Type 94, and a 35T, which is a combined 4 credits, and assuming you have an infantry on board, it's a combined 4 credits to play and then operate those units. And then you play the Great Expanse, which you are on 4 credits, your opponent's on 10. This is going to give you those 3 units and any other units you have on board +6/+6. Which, if you're following the Type 94, the Type 94, the 35T, that goes from 4 attack damage on board to a whopping 22 attack damage on board, which again operates for free and costs 4 to play from your hand and 4 with the Great Expanse. You don't even technically need that second 1 roof in this situation. You have 4 credits, you play 1 roof, you go to 12 credits, you play 35T, Type 94, Great Expanse, and you still have 4 credits left over. Like, the Great Expanse is insane. It is the card that sort of gives you the win condition in a lot of games. The games where you don't just snowball with your Jaegro stuff, you don't just snowball with the 5th regiments. The games where it goes late and you're down so many credit slots, what are you going to do? The answer is the Great Expanse. And again, this isn't just some, like, it's a one of elite in the deck that you're just hoping you draw naturally. You can fish for this with Airlandancy. You can get multiple copies of this with Airlandancy. Now, multiple copies is not going to be that good, because again, the Great Expanse sets your credit slots equal to the enemy credit slots. So you play one of these, and you go from 4 credit slots to 10 credit slots. You are going to gain back all of the things you lost, so even if you don't immediately win that turn, now suddenly you're not still stuck in the mud of, like, 4 credit slots every turn. However, 1 roof is not based on the number of credit slots you are missing. It is not based on the number of credit slots you have less than your opponent. It is on the total number you have lost this game, and gaining credit slots does not subtract from that number. So you can do the Great Expanse, get a big buff, maybe trade off some board, maybe deal some damage to the opponent's HQ, set up lethal if you don't win already. And then following turns, you are going to have back on those 10 credit slots, or however many credit slots your opponent had, you are suddenly going to be back on that number of credits with the additional credits off of 1 roof, and the additional ability to then start playing your other credit denial cards to go from like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and that's still fine, and then you're going to have a new wave of boards of 5th regiments and Jakes to try to snowball out and win if you don't just win off the Great Expanse. And again, if you get 2 Great Expanse, maybe you gain back these credits, you get some more 1 roofs in hand, and then you deny yourself credits all over again. Use the second half of your deck, the second half of the self-credit denial package to get back down. Because even the Great Expanse, even if you're just 3 credit slots behind your opponent, you know, even if you play another Airlandancy into another Commit the Reserves into another 40th Regiment to go 3 credits down on them, Great Expanse, 4 credits give all units +3/+3 is still really, really remarkably good. The Alliance used to be a 4 credit the Alliance, which is now a 5 credit, give all non-US units, friendly non-US units, +2/+2, used to be 4. And it was so good that it needed to be nerfed to 5 credits. So to be clear, this is 4 credits, +2/+2 to only some of your units, and it was the best card, well, it was in the best deck in the game and needed to be nerfed. So the Great Expanse, you have 2 credits less than your opponent. If they go first, and you deny yourself credits once, that's enough. Well, no, that's not true. You still need to deny yourself credits twice. But if they still go first and you deny credits twice, that is a pre-nerf Alliance. And if you deny your credits any more than that, this starts to get out of hand really, really quickly. And again, it's going to be very, very easy to just OTK your opponent from hand with even just a couple tanks, blitz tanks. The Great Expanse is the payoff this deck absolutely needed. This deck is going to be insane. I'm incredibly excited to play this deck on ladder. I hope you are too, if you can pick together some of these cards. They are on the expensive end. Commit the Reserves is a special. 40th is a special. Jake is an elite. Great Expanse is an elite. Desperate Measures is an elite. It's going to be an expensive deck. However, it's going to be a very, very powerful deck with a lot of return on investment, because I imagine that this deck is going to be dominated in ladder. I think it's going to be dominated in tournaments. And again, it's going to be incredibly difficult to play, because denying your own credits, it requires quite a lot of forward thinking. You can't just simply play your 1-cost units into your 2-cost units into your 3-cost units and win the game. It requires a lot of forethought. It requires a lot of setting up. It's almost like a combo aggro deck, and that is incredibly exciting. That's not something we've really had in cards before. And yeah, the Great Expanse, and 40th Cavalry Regiment. These cards are going to be integral pieces to this deck. So I'm very, very thankful to have had the opportunity to reveal these cards. Let me know what you think of these 2 new cards in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of this deck. Are you imagining this as a Japan-German aggro deck? Are you looking at other ally nations? Are you looking at maybe using this package to do a more combo deck rather than an aggro deck? What are you going to be using? How are you going to be using these cards? Comment down below or join my Discord link in the description to continue the conversation there. Thank you very much for watching if you've gotten all the way through, and subscribe if you haven't already. I will catch all of y'all in the next one where I finish off reviewing the next wave of cards that are being revealed for Covert Operations.